Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Today is the January 28th, 2026 Regional Housing Council meeting. My name is Emily Klaus. I am the Regional Housing Council Chair and Thurston County Commissioner. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a different introduction. We have several new members, and I want to just welcome all of our new Regional Housing Council members who are here tonight. We typically go around and I will pass it jurisdiction to jurisdiction and allow the representative from each jurisdiction to introduce themselves and whatever staff they have joining them. We always have a number of county staff on here. Given that I'm on my phone, it might be a little tricky for me to introduce all of the county staff, but I'll give it a shot. So we're joined by Alex Purse, Elisa Sparkman. I know Tom's in here, Tom Webster, Jen Freiheit, and sorry if I'm missing anyone. You're all small on my screen. And we have AJ May, my executive aide. Did I miss any county staff?
Yeah, we have Kaden Hill with us, Leah Tangerman, and I think, did we get everybody else? Sorry if I missed it.
Me. Hi, everybody.
And Jackie Velasco.
Sorry, perfect. Jackie. Thank you so much. I couldn't see anyone that had their camera off, so I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the City of Olympia.
Robert Vanderpool. I am also, my alternate is here, I believe, Paul. And then with Jacinda, Krista, and Jay.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everyone from Olympia. I'll pass it over to Lacey.
Yeah, I am Nick. I'm the new primary for the City of Lacey. I am joined by the new alternate and new member to our council. If everyone wants to welcome Ryan Sui. Sui or Sai, I'm hoping I pronounced that right. I'm sure he'll correct me here soon.
And then see you.
Okay. Then from the City of Lacey, looks like we have Jennifer Adams, Ryan Andrews, I saw you there, and then also Vanessa Dolby. And I think that is it from Lacey. Rick said he might join, but it doesn't look like he is here.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And thanks, Ryan, for joining. And good job on the staff callouts, Nick, especially for your first meeting as the official rep. That was nice.
Hey, they do the hard work.
Yeah, they really do. Okay, so let's pass it over to Tumwater.
Hi, Megan Sullivan, she, her pronouns. I'm the new representative for the Tumwater City Council, and I know I'm joined by Erica Smith Erickson and Sharon L. Sharon, I've not learned to pronounce your last name. Is there anyone else from Tumwater here with us today?
That's it.
I'm here, Joan. Kathy.
Oh, Joan, alternate Joan. Thank you. Hi, Joan.
Hi, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us and welcome. All right, City of Yelm.
Sorry for that delay, the unmute thing. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Cooper. I'm the planning and building manager for the city. With me today is Andrew Collar. He's an associate planner with us, and he's going to start serving as our representative on the tech team. And we have a new council member, Griselda Arias, who should be joining this meeting as the newest council member and representative to the RHC. So I'm really happy to have her on board. I think she's going to do a good job for the city and on this committee.
Thanks, Gary. That's really exciting. I'm glad to welcome Griselda to the Regional Housing Council. And I see that we were joined at the county by our county manager, Leonard Hernandez. Thanks for hopping on, Leonard. I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged you. I saw you on here.
Thanks so much. My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we will turn it over to, so that's all of our jurisdictions. So I'll turn it over to, we have a couple advisory board members here representing the different boards that we have, and I will turn it over to Meg.
Hi everyone, Meg Martin with the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. I'm the chair and co-chair with Trish Gregory. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Meg. And is Trish here also?
Yes, I'm here as well. Thanks for having
Awesome.
me. I'm here
Yeah.
in two capacities. I'm on the agenda for another topic as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Trish. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
And I see Dana.
Hey, y'all. Good afternoon. My name is Dana Evans, and I am the Homeless Services Advisory Board Chair. And I didn't see him in there, but in case he's here, our co-chair is Garrett Leonard.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then do we have any of our LESC members present?
We've got Heidi here. Hi, Heidi.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that covers everyone. Did I miss any jurisdictions or any advisory board members? All right. Perfect. Well, then that takes us into the next section of our agenda. Well, same section, but still in the introductions. So staff put together a really nice orientation packet for new members, and I hope everyone had a chance to review that, but I know it's the beginning of the year, so there's a chance folks are, still getting oriented to all of your new positions. If you haven't had a chance to check out that orientation packet, please do. It's got a lot of really valuable information in there, and we would love some feedback if there's any questions that folks have that we feel should be answered in the orientation packet. We're happy to kind of add to it, but I think staff did a great job on kind of outlining some of the major components of the Regional Housing Council. Shout out to Elisa and staff for putting that packet together. So I will kind of take a little bit of time to go through some of just the key components of that packet. If we could maybe bring it up on the screen in case folks don't have it readily available, then we can kind of just go through it quickly. And please feel free to ask questions. We do have a little bit of time set aside for this just to make sure everyone feels like we're kind of setting a good ground and letting people have the opportunity to ask questions that they might have coming onto the Regional Housing Council. So over the year in 2025, we spent a great deal of time figuring out where to go from here. There have been a lot of questions about the purpose of the Regional Housing Council as new members come on board and there's turnover, and we got to a really good place last year where we worked with the Lineker team. They were our consultants through the year to help develop our mission, vision, and values. And so this is really the direction that the Regional Housing Council has set forth. And this is our plan moving forward. So I welcome any questions that folks have, or if there's anything where we could provide a little bit more clarity. But you can see here the vision and mission on the screen. And I'll just real quick, since they're short, our vision is everyone in Thurston County has stable shelter or housing that they feel is safe and the services they need to thrive. And our mission is a collaborative regional effort to increase affordable housing and housing stability and reduce homelessness in Thurston County by advising decision makers, advancing regional goals, and educating the public. I won't go through all the values and strategies here, but I welcome you to review the packet if you haven't had a chance to do that yet. And for anyone who's part of the call or listening, that was part of the development of the mission, vision, and values, I just want to say huge thank you. We had a lot of great input from our advisory board members, which was critical to really aligning this new path forward with the true on-the-ground needs. So we couldn't have done that without our providers and people who have really lived through some of the issues we're trying to solve. So thank you very
I think Commissioner Klaus, we lost your sound. You're not on mute, but we lost you.
How about now? Is this better?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Weird. I don't know how that happened. So thanks, Tom. These agreements kind of stem from what we developed when we started our strategic planning last year. as a team, and then they've been adapted to be applicable to the council as a whole. So these are kind of the things that we've committed to doing, the things that we've committed to not doing, and I'll take a little bit of time to just kind of go through this. So we have really made a strong commitment to listening to one another and staying focused on the topic at hand. There's a lot of, issues that we're working with here in the RHC that are extremely sensitive. We talk about a lot of life or death issues, and it can get political, it can get emotional, it can get extremely vulnerable. And so we really ask that everybody who is here takes the time to fully listen before we respond, respect each other's different perspectives, follow through on our commitments, both as members of the council and to the public that we are serving. Keep our work centered on the vision, mission, and values. And please use the raise hand function when you want to speak if we are doing virtual or hybrid meetings. And yeah, just kind of another shout out to the vision, mission, and values. I believe the plan is to have those statements on every RHC agenda so that it's easily accessible. That way we can really try to make sure that we're staying centered on that work that was laid out last year. And that way we can also kind of keep each other accountable. So everybody's welcome to provide feedback to one another. We just need to do that respectfully and really try to take the time to listen to what others are saying, even if we might not agree. And then committing to not talking over each other, dismissing ideas, letting distractions or side conversations take us off track, which to some extent, there will be a sidebar here or there, and we can always put stuff on future agendas. So don't let that deter you from asking a question or making a comment if you would like to, because we also want to hear everyone's voice. We also commit to not assuming the worst about each other's intent and not undermining the group once a decision has been made, which for all of you who are on elected bodies, that's something we're all very familiar with. So I don't think we'll have issues there. And then, of course, the last part here, we won't always get it right. We're not going to be perfect, but when we don't get something right, we acknowledge it. We'll stay curious. We'll give and receive feedback with respect and kindness, make amends and rebuild trust, and refocus on what matters and move forward together. And I don't mean to go through those all one by one as like me being a teacher and everyone else is the student type dynamic, but just because I really want to give respect to all of the effort that went into developing these agreements and set everyone up for success, because we have a lot of new members. And like I said, some of this stuff is really kind of sensitive. So if we could try to keep track with, these agreements and help each other stay accountable, that would be very much appreciated. And I know we're going to get a lot of really great work done this year. I'll pause there. Are there any questions or comments or any points of clarification that can be provided on this section? Nick.
Yeah, I actually really like this. The only comment I would make is an expansion of the org chart to maybe go in a little more in depth than what each section does. Or that's also something that might be able to be done in like an in-person orientation or maybe one-on-one orientation type thing. But otherwise, I thought it was great.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely appreciate that suggestion, and I kind of lean towards agreeing with that. And I'm just really quick scrolling through. Yeah, I think that that's something that could be spelled out more, especially when it comes to our advisory boards. They serve a really awesome, excellent purpose, important in the community, and it'd be good to kind of maybe spell that out a little bit more. But yeah, great comment, and definitely something we could cover maybe in a future meeting too, just to make sure we've got that covered. Good catch. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? All right. Tom, is there anything you wanted to add, or any staff that want to add anything on this section?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One is on the, there is a calendar here for future meeting dates. We do need to want to note that the November is a to be determined. Typically, we meet on the fourth Wednesday of each month. Fourth Wednesday is the day before Thanksgiving. I don't think so. We generally avoid the November and December fourth Wednesday meetings. We've traditionally moved those up to the second Wednesday. The second Wednesday in November this year is Veterans Day, So we're going to need to find an alternative date for the November meeting. So just wanted to highlight that in your calendar. The other thing, we know there's been some interest in learning more about all the funding that is available under RHC. We didn't really go into that in your orientation packet. So we are proposing that at the February meeting. We have a full agenda tonight, but at the February meeting, we will provide additional information and some background on all the funding sources that are available. And also want to offer to any new members, or really any member who would like to have a one-on-one or a small group discussion with staff to answer, get deeper dive into some of this. Happy to do that and have more individual meetings with you to answer questions about the REC and provide more background and context. And I see Leonard has his hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much. Hey, RHC, Tom recently presented some of the funding explanation to the Board of County Commissioners, I think a couple of weeks ago. He did a fantastic job. So it's not always easy to take a lot of complicated funding sources and to blend them into a presentation, but Tom did that. So I'd encourage you, if you're new or curious, to make sure you make that meeting and take Tom up on his offer to provide additional information. He's a great resource.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo that sentiment. Thanks, Leonard. And thanks again, Tom, for that clarification. And more to come on selecting some of the dates for those future months, but I appreciate the heads up on that. All right. So with that, we didn't approve the agenda, but I will do that now as we also approve the minutes. So if there's a motion, we would need to approve the agenda and the minutes from the December 10th meeting.
Move to approve the agenda and minutes as published.
Thank you. Perfect. Motion and second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. And I'm an aye as well.
This is Megan. I wasn't there in December, so I'm going to abstain from the minutes because I didn't participate. I did watch it back, but just wanted to note that for the record.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any other abstentions, by the way, since we have a couple folks in that same boat? All right. Well, then it passes with one abstention. Thanks, everyone. So we will move on to public comment. And for this, I will turn it over to Tom.
Yeah, thank you. We do accept public comment at every RHC meeting. There is one written public comment that we received. It is in your meeting packet. So reference that. It is related to the Franz Anderson Permanent Supportive Housing Project. We did also have one person sign up to make public comment, but I do not see that person in our attendees currently. But we will ask our attendees, if you're an attendee and would like to make public comment, please use the raise hand function and we can promote you to allow you to do so. So if anyone attendee, I do see John Torrance. So Leah, if you can promote John to make public comment. So just give us a second. And we don't have a timer, but generally the guidelines are around 3 minutes for public comment. There, John, go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, my name is John Torrance. I'm the Director of Housing Development here at the Low Income Housing Institute, and just wanted to make myself available if there are any questions about the Franz Anderson project or our request to make half of the units at 50% AMI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm very glad that you're here giving public comment because I think you might be the first public comment during my potentially last meeting of being chair of the Regional Housing Council. So I really appreciate it. I know typically public comment is not like a back and forth conversation, but there's also not a chat to drop your contact info. But Tom, is there a way we could get John's contact info out to the council in case anyone wants to take him up on that offer to answer any questions?
Yeah, we can make sure to get that out. And also, if later in the agenda when that topic comes up, if it's appropriate to promote John, we can do that at that time if there's questions.
He was at our work session yesterday and was very helpful as well.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you. And Jacinda, I saw her raise her hand. She has all of my contact information, which I think she can disseminate to the group.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That works great. And yeah, as Tom said, feel free to raise your hand if there's something that comes up later on that item that you want to speak on, and we can promote
Thank
you
you.
again.
I will. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks for being here. Any other folks online for public comment?
I'm not seeing any other raised hands.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, John. And yeah, for anyone listening, of course, like Tom said, written comment is also an option before the meeting, and we love to get those as well. So with that, we will move on to the next section of our agenda, which is to vote on the chair and vice chair for the council this year. So this isn't I don't believe this is spelled out in the orientation packet itself, but as part of the interlocal agreement, the county's representative must serve as either the chair or the vice chair of the council. So just keeping that in mind, I think that the best way to do this would be to open the floor to any potential nominations. And we can start with the chair position. And if there are any nominations in the room for chair, you're welcome to raise your hand to make that nomination.
I would nominate Emily Klaus for chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Asking the 3 times, and I actually do have one, but I wanted to go last.
I see Robert has his hand raised.
Robert.
I'll wait, Emily.
Okay. I was going to nominate Robert Vanderpool for chair. Olympia, does a really great job. I think Robert's representation would be great for the council. And also, there's typically, although it's not written, like memorialized anywhere, but typically the rotation is an annual rotation. And out of respect for that historic rotation, I'd love to nominate Robert for chair of the council. And with that, I think what we could do next is go into exception of the nominations. And while I'm actually very humbled, Councilmember Dunning, that you nominated me for chair, I really appreciate that a lot. I think that at this time I'll decline the nomination just based on the fact that I'm nominating Councilmember Vanderpool from Olympia. But I just want to say thank you very much for the nomination. It does mean a lot. I appreciate it. So with that, Robert, do you accept the nomination for chair?
I do.
Perfect. So then we only have one nomination, but just to make it clean for the record, we can go ahead and take a vote. For this one, I will do, if you could raise your hand to vote so that we can keep good track for the record, that would be great. And if you have any issues raising your hand, you can wave at the camera or come off mute. Well, I haven't called for the vote yet, but if there are questions, okay, it looks like those are to vote. So everyone's eager. Okay, so I will move to nominate Robert Vanderpool for chair of the council. Is there a second for that?
I guess I'll second myself.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item before we take the vote?
I would like to have some discussion on that.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I would be against it for 2 reasons. One, politically, having 2 members who are part of DSA kind of puts the RHC into a very politically sensitive and potentially biased situation. And then second, I've been notified that there's been discussion between Robert and a member of our council to undermine Lacey's position on the RHC, and I feel like that's disclusionary for role as chair of the RHC.
Thanks, Nick, for your comments. I appreciate your position. Is there any response to Nick's comments or any further discussion on this topic? I'll say if there's, oh, go ahead, Megan.
This is Megan. Question. It is my understanding that it is an unwritten practice of this group to do a rotation. The person representing Tumwater previously was in one of the leadership positions, and I was curious what the historical practice of rotation has looked like over time.
Thank you. That's a good question. I have not been here as long as some of our staff, so I will probably let Tom take that one unless, Tom, you want to delegate that to someone else.
No, I can answer that question. So the Regional Housing Council began in 2020. At that point, our council member from Olympia was one of the on the leadership. Then it transferred to Lacey, and Lacey was in that position for 2 years, and then Tumwater has been in that role for the past 2 years. So it has gone from Olympia to Lacey to Tumwater, and so following that historical rotation, it would be Olympia's turn again. But as you said, there's nothing kind of formalized or documented requiring that rotation.
All right. Thank you, Tom, for that answer. And thanks, Megan, for the question. Before we move on to call for the vote, I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Dunning's comments and concerns. I definitely, want to make sure that this council represents the community to the best possible extent. And because of the fact that we have the agreements in place, I do have full confidence that this council will be able to conduct our discussions respectfully. I don't necessarily agree with some of the characterizations of the comments that you've made, but I don't want to discredit or invalidate them. I'm not sure what conversations have taken place on the side, but I'm always welcome and more than open to talk with you if you want to sit down. I'm happy to hear more about what your concerns might be, because I really want to make sure that not just for you, but for all of our new members, that the onboarding process and transition to the new membership goes as smoothly as possible. So I just wanted to say that, and please don't hesitate to reach out, Nick, if there's anything you want to chat with me about or provide context on, so that I can be as supportive as possible.
I think it would be appropriate to hear from Robert on what took place during the conversation.
I don't know what. Chair, is it okay to respond?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what conversation we're referring to. I'm not going to respond to. I'm not going to respond to any red baiting or any. I'm not doing that. It's not who I am. It's not who I am as a council member. It's not how I'm gonna if in the position I'm gonna act. We all have different opinions here. But my ultimate goal is to ensure that we can build housing for people in the community, and that's why I'm on here. So I don't want to sidetrack from the vote in front of us.
Thank you, Robert, for your willingness to chime in. I'm gonna try to keep us on track as well. The last thing I think I'll say on this is that the role of the chair is really just to facilitate the meeting. The chair doesn't have any additional influence upon decisions, and typically my practice as chair and what I've seen in other bodies is the chair will normally wait until the end to give input. So there have been a lot of times where I've had things to say and I've waited until everyone else has had a chance to comment, just not only out of respect of the process, but to ensure that I don't influence anybody by saying something first as the chair. So I have faith that we'll be able to conduct ourselves respectfully and responsibly on this council. But please don't hesitate if any concerns do arise throughout the year. You can bring them up to me or staff, or I'm sure Robert would be willing to have maybe a direct conversation, but don't hesitate to keep expressing your concerns as the year unfolds, Nick. But I think that we'll all be pleasantly surprised at how much we can be collaborative together. So with that, I will go ahead and call for the vote. And this vote, just as a reminder, is on the motion to elect Robert Vanderpool as the chair of the council. And I'll call for the vote. If you could raise your hand with the raise hand function for an aye vote, that would be much appreciated. And I'll give everyone a couple seconds. I know it can be hard to find the button when you're on a phone or something. All right. So we have 3 ayes, giving it a couple more seconds. Okay. If there are any nay votes, well, first, if you could lower your hand if you're an aye. And then if you can raise your hand if your vote is nay, you can do that now. All right. So we've got one nay vote, and then you can go ahead and lower your hand, Nick. And are there any abstentions? Okay. It looks like that motion passes 3-1. And oh, go ahead, Megan. You have a question?
I do. I wanted to wait till the motion was completed. My question is just a clarification of I didn't see many hands come up, and I did read the interlocal agreement and understand that not everybody present is a voting member. I did understand that some of the folks from the various boards are voting members, and so I was curious if they are here and if they were abstaining.
Thank you, Megan. And if there's clarification staff want to provide, you can. I'll say the topic of whether or not advisory board members can vote on the council was discussed a little bit last year, but we mostly pushed it off to a conversation that I believe will be happening this year about governance components. But Tom, if you want to fill in the gaps on that, I think this would be a great time to do that since it comes up quite often.
Yeah. So for clarification, the only voting members are the representatives of each of the jurisdictions.
Thanks.
The advisory board chairs are non-voting members of the RHC.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. I was thinking about, you kind of read my mind a little bit because I was thinking about saying that when we were taking the vote, just in case, because I know there might be new advisory board members too, potentially. But yeah, Tom's hit the nail on the head with that. And there have been various perspectives shared around that. And I think it's definitely worth bringing it up in a conversation. Our advisory board members have lived experience and or professional experience working with people who have experienced issues around homelessness or housing instability. And I think they have amazing perspectives to provide. I saw that last year through the whole strategic planning process. And I definitely think it's worth bringing it up at some point to see if this council is interested in allowing the advisory board members to have a vote. So great question. All right, so we have one more item on this topic, which is election of the vice chair. I mentioned earlier it does have to be a county representative, but to be clean for the record, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to nominations for vice chair. Robert?
I'm going to nominate Commissioner Klaus for vice chair.
Thank you. I will accept the nomination. I don't think that there's much of a choice, but if there were, I would be very happy to accept the nomination. Since there are no other options, I'm not going to call for other nominations. We can kind of be quick. All in favor of electing me as the vice chair of the council this year, please raise your hand. All right, that is 4 of us. So that passes unanimously. Thank you so much for all the thoughtful comments and feedback. I am going to pass the baton to, oh, Nick, did you still have a question? Okay, perfect. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Robert and let him get started right away because I know he's super eager to be chair and I'm excited to see you in action. So I want to just say it's been a real honor to serve as the chair of this council. It's definitely one of the most rewarding things I've had the privilege of doing in my tenure as commissioner so far. And I really appreciate the trust that this council put in me last year when they allowed me to serve as the chair. And I'm always here to answer questions. So don't hesitate to reach out if anyone wants to have like a one-on-one and talk RHC stuff. It's one of my favorite topics, so I'd love to do that. Gary, I see your hand, and then I'll pass it over to Robert.
Sorry, the unmute thing again, but I just wanted to announce that our new council member, Griselda Arias, has joined the meeting. So as our rep going forward.
All right. Thank you for letting us know. Griselda, did you want to say hi?
Yes, I do.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here and hope to be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Griselda. Welcome and congrats on your appointment. All right, Robert, you can take it from here.
All right, let's get into the business. Starting with item number 5, continuum of care, notice of funding opportunity presentation. That's Tom. It's an informational with no voting. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, thank you. So a little bit of context. So last year the REC decided that they were interested in having more presentations from outside subject matter experts on a variety of topics that were of interest to the RHC. And so this is really in a response to that effort last year. And so the first one, we are bringing in some experts from our community to talk about continuum of care funding. So this is funding that is federal funding that comes into our community. It is not under the purview of the Regional Housing Council, but it's important funding for our community as it intersects with a lot of the funding decisions that the RHC does make. So we have 3 guests here today. So I'd like to introduce Nick Mondow from the Department of Commerce, along with Trish Hefton from Family Support Center and Derek Harris from Community Youth Services, who are 2 local agencies that receive this funding. There's also been a lot of churn from the federal level that's impacting or potentially impacting this funding going forward. So we wanted this council to be aware of potential impacts of this funding as the RHC goes into making funding decisions kind of this year and in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick, Derek, and Trish. Have about 15 minutes of them talking about COC funding and where we're at. And then we'll have an opportunity for just some questions and answers, but there's no action on this item. This is purely informational only to kind of expand the knowledge of the board about homeless services funding in our community. So I will turn it over to Nick, Trish, and Derek.
Great.
Nick is going to go
Thank
first.
you. Yep. Thank you, Tom. I hope you all can hear me well. Pardon my voice. So Nick Mondo, I work at the Department of Commerce. I'm the Federal Programs Manager in the Homelessness Assistance Unit. I oversee pretty much all of the HUD programs for homelessness, including the Continuum of Care program, which I'll talk about now. I'm going to give a very quick overview of the COC program and then let Trish and Derek take over. So the COC program is kind of HUD's flagship program for pushing funding to states for homelessness, except that it doesn't go to states, it goes to continuums of care, which are regional geographic areas that then get together to collaborate, to make a plan together and apply for funding together to end homelessness in their geographic area. There's over 400 or so COCs in the country. In our state, we have 6. King, Pierce, Snohomish, Clark, and Spokane are their own COC, and then the balance of the rest of the counties in Washington State makes the balance of state COC. And that's where Commerce comes in. We're the what's called the collaborative applicant for the balance of state COC. So even though we don't actually pass through the funding from HUD to the providers, we work for the providers, help them with their applications. We go through and take care of a lot of the responsibilities of the COC program. Like I said, it's kind of HUD's way of pushing through their funding and also what they want to see out of states and out of communities around homelessness, including the point in time count as part of the COC program, coordinated entry is part of the COC program, a bunch of things, system performance evaluation is part of the COC program. So we help fulfill all those responsibilities to the Department of Commerce. And then basically once a year, there's a great big application that all of the partners, providers, and current COC program recipients participate in, that Commerce leads. Basically there's, let's see, so I'll kind of go back a little bit. So across the country, there's about $3.5 billion that goes to this program. In our state, it's about $120 million. In the balance of state, the 34 smaller counties, it's about $20 million. And I think in Thurston County, it's about $4.5 million. So we have a board, we have a COC board that's in charge of making the decisions on on what priorities we have in our COC, what we want to apply for, what types of projects. But typically the projects are mostly permanent housing projects, which are permanent supportive housing, which is basically no time limit on the subsidy for people who are experiencing homelessness and with a disability. Rapid rehousing is short-term rental assistance for people who just need, 1 to 24 months worth of rental assistance, and then they're able to stay in those units once the subsidy ends. Is also transitional housing, which is time limited to up to 2 years assistance. And then there's supportive services only, like an outreach or case management type program. So we get together once a year, we apply for funding on behalf of the members and the recipients who currently all hold a grant, right? So their contracts are on 1 year cycles, and they apply every year for renewal. So if they have a permanent supportive housing project or 2 at their organization, they apply to get that funding renewed. HUD typically does renew about 90% at least of that funding. The other 10% is based on a competition. This is a competitive program, so we compete against COCs across the country. We put together an application, and HUD scores us on how well we're partnering with other organizations, state agencies, other partners, what our performance is as far as outcomes, as far as like exiting people to permanent housing, and a bunch of other things, how well we're serving survivors of domestic violence, et cetera. They give us a score, and the higher we score, the more of our existing projects get funded. And then if we score really well, we have an opportunity to get new funding each year. That's the kind of quick overview, and I'm happy to answer questions. I do want to talk about kind of what's been going on lately because it has been different under this administration. So this past November, I'm going to pull up some notes here just to try to keep myself a little bit on track while I'm quickly running through this. This past November, HUD released a notice of funding opportunity. That's the way they start the competition. That was kind of a surprise because in 2024, they said that they were going to only start doing it every other year because it is such a big burden, not just on, of course, Commerce, but all the providers who have to renew their projects every year. So they did release a NOFO, we call it, Notice of Funding Opportunity, that had many, many drastic changes compared to basically forever, for decades, of the way HUD operated this. Essentially, they wanted to, their intent was, their new policy direction is to limit the amount of permanent housing that each COC can be awarded from unlimited. And in our state, we had about 87% of all of our funds under this program were for permanent housing of some type, either permanent supportive housing or that short-term rental assistance. They wanted to cap that at 30%. They also wanted to only essentially, I said that 90% of all projects are renewed. That was partially because of a process where they kind of guaranteed, as long as they met threshold criteria, about 90%, 85% would be safe and not be cut based on a low score in your COC's application. They wanted to reduce that to 30%. So 30% cap on permanent housing, 30% cap on what was essentially held harmless. Big changes. They also wanted to do a very short timeline, so they released that NOFO. Actually, our state, in partnership with 19 other states, our Attorney General's office, sued HUD essentially. Also, there's a separate lawsuit, the National Alliance on Ending Homelessness and other organizations and local jurisdictions across the country also sued HUD basically on how they released that NOFO, the timeline they gave, and other problematic elements of that NOFO. Essentially, because these contracts were all about to expire starting right now. They're expiring right now, and HUD was going to push back the process potentially months and leave a bunch of projects either not knowing if they were going to get the funding for next year and not knowing what to tell the landlords they partner with and the people who are in those units. and also because of the 30% cap on permanent housing, the 30% limit on what was guaranteed to be funded. So a bunch of reasons they sued, and then HUD actually pulled their NOFO. Currently, where we stand with that is the judge in Rhode Island did issue an injunction where, at least temporarily, they've ordered HUD, and HUD has started to do this. They've ordered HUD to go ahead and automatically renew all the current projects that we have that were funded through last year's competition. And pending the result of the litigation, which should be finalized by the end of February, if HUD ends up winning that, then they can go ahead and reinstate that NOFO from last year with all those extra requirements and changes they said, or I described. But if HUD does not win, then they do have to continue to renew and fund all the existing projects that were awarded last year. Now, I'll just kind of wrap it up with, even if HUD doesn't win the lawsuit, there's always this year, right? So this used to be an annual process. Like I said, last year HUD did change it to every other year. But we do expect another NOFO, another competition this year. And so even if HUD's forced to fund all the existing projects this year, we do expect the 2026 NOFO, which usually comes out in the summertime or maybe late spring, early summer, or sometimes late summer, to look a lot like the original one that was issued last year, meaning caps on permanent housing and just an opportunity to push some of the policy positions that HUD has. I'll let Trish and Derek maybe speak to those a little bit more, but the caps on permanent housing, reducing to 30%, and then also not guaranteeing funding for a large number of projects with a large number of people currently in them. So I think I'm going to go ahead and close there, and happy to take questions, but I want to let Derek and Trish, who are really the experts on this, they actually operate the programs, been close to it for a long time, kind of take over from here. Unless, Tom, there's anything else clarifying question you have or anything.
Derek
Tom,
or
you're
Trish?
muted.
Yep, sorry. Go ahead. No, I didn't have any questions. Trish, why don't you?
Great, thank you.
Keep going. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for setting that up for us, Nick. It's been quite an interesting experience just trying to figure out what our response as a community would be and how we manage significant changes with a very short time period. So I want to talk a little more about what that would mean for us here locally in Thurston County. The HUD COC program funds 8 organizations in our community for over 18 different programs. That total number of households served under HUD programs in Thurston County, 3,407. So we're not talking about a small pocket of households or a small number of people that these changes would impact. The greatest impact that we would see is to the permanent housing. Specifically permanent supportive housing, which, as Nick described, permanent supportive housing requires that a person has a disability and has chronicity of homelessness as well. So it's highly vulnerable, individuals who are likely to remain homeless or become homeless again if they don't have a permanent subsidy. That portion of our population is 127 households, or a total of 203 individuals. For us, our greatest concern with these changes is there's more existing permanent supportive housing programs in our community than there would be allowable funds if those changes were to take place. What that would mean is our highly vulnerable folks who have been promised a permanent subsidy and need that permanent subsidy because of their disability, inability to increase their income, would not have those funds any longer. For organizations, there's a second layer of complication in that all of our permanent supportive housing projects that have federal funds within them Typically, and county funds as well, any public funding, there's covenants that are put in place to ensure that those units are maintained as permanent supportive housing for a range of minimum 25 years, and some of our projects are at a 40-year covenant. So if they don't have the funds for those subsidies for those projects, there's really a risk that they have to repay all of the funds that they receive from public funders for those projects. So that's pretty significant. For Family Support Center, that would mean a very small amount compared to some of our other partners across the balance of state. Our organization has one project, the Landing 3, which has county funds that are I believe they're home dollars. You can correct me if I'm wrong on the fund source, Tom. But that has a restrictive covenant on it. And those permanent supportive housing subsidies are funded through our HUD COC program. So if this were to change and we had to reallocate those funds to another type of a project, we would be required then to repay the $1 million to Thurston County, because we would not be able to sustain the project without funding for that project for the subsidy portion of that. Or we'd have to identify an alternate funding source, which is, I think Derek's going to talk a little more about that, the importance of our local dollars, but could impact your decisions as an RHC as to what projects to fund in the future to help sustain those programs that would otherwise have to repay the funding. And if you're thinking of like a project like our first large scale project, the Landing, which is 62 units, that's a $28 to $29 million project. All of those funds would have to be repaid if we couldn't sustain those programs as permanent supportive housing for the term of those covenants. The other piece I wanted to touch on too is there's two different project types that fall under permanent housing. There might be more than that, but the two primary ones that are funded through our HUD COC are the permanent supportive housing, which make up a smaller portion. And then there's the rapid rehousing dollars. The rapid rehousing dollars are utilized to help people who are experiencing literal homelessness to access housing, and typically it's a deposit and then a portion of the rent for up to 2 years. It's not a permanent subsidy like with permanent supportive housing, though many of our projects do prioritize people who are experiencing chronic homelessness. So it's individuals who do have a disabling condition or have significant challenges in being able to sustain paying rent independently. Those projects make up, I gotta look at my notes. That is about 621 individuals in our community that the rapid rehousing is funded through the HUD COC. And it's a mix of families, single adults, veterans, all of our most vulnerable populations. So I think in closing, I would just say, like Nick said, it's $4.3 million that we get in our community through the HUD COC program. And when we think about the impact of losing those funds, there's not enough funding through Thurston County to cover those funding gaps if those were to become a real if we were to lose those dollars. So it's really important to us as community partners to ensure that we're looking outside of Thurston County for funding and not relying solely on Thurston County Public Health to fund our housing programs. And this is one of the core opportunities that we have to ensure that we're getting those funds from outside the community here. So I'll turn it over to Derek. I think he's going to talk a little more kind of about the impacts and here locally and the CHG funding.
I think there's a question from Leonard first, maybe.
Yeah, thanks so much. Trish, I haven't had the privilege of meeting you, but I just wanted to say great job on the presentation. I appreciated the overview. Well done.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, I'm Derek Harris. I serve as the CEO for Community Youth Services, and I want to take a few minutes to just kind of connect the COC funding to the dollars that the RHC approves at the local level in our community, and it kind of helps to fund our overall homeless response system. The federal HUD dollars from the BOSCOC, I'll just use the acronym if, balance of state, fund a number of activities, includes supportive services, outreach, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent housing, and more. These dollars support a variety of agencies and target populations, which have been mentioned previously. Agencies include Community Youth Services, Family Support Center, Housing Authority of Thurston County, Catholic Community Services, Lehigh, and more. And within that continuum of services that are a key part of all the strategies that we're doing at the local level, with outreach efforts, our coordinated entry processes, the point in time counts that we do, items that are associated with our 5-year plan to end homelessness, and funding for strategies that directly associate with our Built for Zero and Communities for Functional Zero efforts. The HUD funding is a key funder associated with those activities that we're doing at the local level. The Housing Action Team, or the HAT, meetings that occur monthly, represents our local continuum of care, and those activities represent us at the balance of state continuum of care for the 35 counties that Nick mentioned earlier. We have voting members that are on that steering committee currently. On the BOS-COC, that's Tammy Smith from the Housing Authority, Natalie Scoveran from Family Support Center, and myself. And just to put it a little bit in context, about half of the young adult housing funding in Thurston County comes from federal dollars. About a quarter of the funding to support operations at Rosie's Drop-In Center and Young Adult Shelter comes from these federal dollars. And in combination with, we're talking about matching and leveraging, we're trying to build our 3 legs of our stool of our federal, state, and local. The dollars that the county provides for community use services, I'll just use us as an example, leverages about $3 million of either state or federal that we're able to bring into the community. So the dollars are intertwined in that way. For the HUD funding specifically, no less than 25% cash or in-kind contributions and other sources are to be utilized for match to even get the dollars. So the CHG dollars are directly utilized for that. State dollars can be utilized for that as well, but many providers utilize the county dollars to provide that match for the program. Like I said earlier, the services, in each of our programs are intertwined from federal, state, and local. It helps to support increased capacity, it provides stability, and it fills gaps for funding when contracts could stay stagnant. As was mentioned a little bit earlier, if HUD proceeds with cutting, 3.8 million of Thurston County's dollars, and I think over a statewide, we're talking about 14 million plus of permanent housing dollars, there's a lot of complications that could occur both to participants who are already existing in services. We could not reallocate to transitional housing dollars for those participants in permanent housing, so they would be at risk of homelessness without a subsidy any longer. At the state level, there may be advocacy opportunities that come up. There may be bills that come up that try to backfill that. If HUD proceeds, it would be something that I would ask the council to be aware of. I think at the level that we're at and monitoring those things, I know if we become aware of it, we're definitely going to elevate that for people to be aware, because we know that just alone the county can't provide that level of resources to backfill that, and that's understandable. But it would have an impact on all different levels that we talked about, in capital, in increased homelessness and lack of units, et cetera. So I think that's everything that I have to say on it. Just that it's been a roller coaster for the providers and for the balance of state continuum of care. Any delays in funding could have an impact. The grant types and associated activities that occur with those would impact directly the kind of activities that we're doing at the state level and locally. And there's, without going down that rabbit hole, there is a direct conflict with state law and some of HUD's proposals that we would need to be aware of. So I'll stop there, and I guess we'll open it up for questions, or if any of the other panel members want to make more comments.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. I guess I know we're a little bit over time on the agenda, but I do want to, again, there's no decision or action the RHC needs to take, but we thought this was really important information for RHC members to be aware of what's happening in the community. It has been a rapidly changing environment these last couple months, so wanted to make sure you had the latest information. But Yeah, happy to open it up for questions. Folks may have.
Well, I'm gonna also mention to new members that your alternates can also speak and be involved in this in case that hasn't been mentioned before. Yeah, please raise your hand and jump in. And I do also want to mention that the funding discussion is next, so this may feed a little bit of that conversation. Any comments, questions? Emily.
Thank you. Well, I'll just kind of start by saying I really appreciate the presentation. I definitely learned a lot. I learned a lot more than I thought I might even. This is a lot of really great info. I really appreciate the kind of like highlight of what happens with our youth and young adult funding. That's something that is extremely important and not often talked about in spaces where like a lot of the conversation is oriented around what's going on with our adult populations, which is also important. But I've noticed a lot more young people out on the streets. I've noticed a lot more families with kids out on the streets. And so talking about what's going on with youth and young adults, I think is becoming even more important than it has been, which it's already been a crisis. But I appreciate you, Derek, for being here and for sharing some of that.
Thank you, and always open to sharing more.
Any other comments or questions from folks? Okay. I appreciate all this information. I have a lot to report back to my council on. Please let us know how this goes. This is quite a bit of concern, honestly. There's so many layers of concern of what's going on out there, and please let us know as a body so that we can have conversations about this if it doesn't get renewed. Please let us know. Thank you. I don't know if Tom, if you want to go to the next item.
All right, we ready to move on to the funding discussion? Yeah, thanks so much, Trish, Derek, and Nick. Really appreciate you being here. All right, so next item, we're throwing you new members right into the deep end. So we're not starting off easy. So next item, wanted to have a discussion in the RHC for the last several months, has been kind of prepping to have this discussion around funding specific to the encampment resolution program. So to provide a little bit of context for newer members, the encampment resolution program was originally something developed by the Governor Inslee. It was originally known as the Right-of-Way Initiative, and this was an effort by the governor in 5 counties throughout Washington states to address folks living on states' rights of way. So the county, I think many of you are aware, received funding under this specifically to close. It started off with 5 encampments along the state's right of way, primarily along I-5, Slater Kenny, the city center, one near Lilly Road and Pacific Avenue, and such. And there's been some others that have been added since time. So with that, we've received some funding, and we, with that, have stood up several projects, including the Franz Anderson Tiny Home Village. The Maple Court project is funded under the Encampment Resolution Program. The purchase of Sandy's Flats in downtown Olympia, and there's been other projects as well. Previously, in 2024, our region received close to $9 million in total to fund the operations of all those projects. Beginning in 2025, that funding was reduced to approximately $5.5 million, and that is the baseline amount of funding that the state identified. It was $40 million statewide. Thurston County share was $5.5 million. As a result of that, we were not able to continue to fund all the projects that were initially funded under that project, and we had to make some hard decisions. Also last year, one of the things that happened is this body wanted to provide some of that encampment resolution funding to provide funding for the Quinn Street Village, tiny home village that is operated by the City of Olympia and Catholic Community Services, as well as funds have been given to Unity Commons shelter to have some set aside beds at their shelter for right-of-way or ERP participants. Commerce last year indicated that they were no longer wanting to fund those projects, that they didn't have capital resources in them. After some advocacy from this group and also from mayors and county commissioners and county managers with Commerce agreed to allow funding this year to be used for Quinn Street and Unity Commons, but indicated that they did not intend to use that funding in future years to support those programs, and they wanted local dollars to support those programs. So we also received a letter, and it's in your meeting packet, from the mayors from Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and the Thurston County, requesting that the RHC take a look at ERP funding and come up with contingency plans for what happens. I think in my mind, there's kind of two scenarios. One is if there's a further reduction of that 5.5 million from the state, how do we continue to fund existing ERP projects? But also the immediate is if we're not able to continue to use ERP funding for the Quinn Street or Unity Commons projects, is there some funding that can be used to support those projects to maintain operations? We have received information from City of Olympia staff that they're requesting $400,000 between now and June 30th to maintain operations at Quinn Street, and they'll need $850,000 next year to support Quinn Street operations. And folks from Olympia can weigh in if there's specific questions around those funding to needs. So what we wanted to talk about, and let me share my screen real quickly, just so it's in your meeting packets. So these are the current funding allocations for the ERP funds, the Unity Commons and Sandy's Flats. Unity Commons is only a small percentage of the total funding amount for Unity Commons, but it's important. The Maple Court, also Lehigh has a project, Lotus Court, which is right next to Unity Commons. The state puts a couple $1 million to help construct that. And so there's 10 units of that permanent supportive housing that are set aside for ERP participants. So there's 10 units in that project. Franz Anderson, which is now operated by Vallejo. It was operated previously by Olympia, but is now Vallejo. Quinn Street Village, and then funding for outreach and administration. So that is the current funding allocation. Want to have a conversation to really address the concerns or the request in the letter from the mayors and the council around continued ERP funding and contingency planning. So the other kind of piece of this that I wanted to share with the council is in last year, the RHC made recommendations and funding awards using funds from our local home fund, which is a local sales tax, as well as what we call previously, it's 5386. It's a document recording fee. And so we projected how much money we were going to collect in those revenue sources and awarded those funds. We received our actual collections from 2025, and we collected a little bit more money than we anticipated. So there is some available funding from an additional amount collected in 2025 that is available to award. There's also some additional funding if this council, and we're going to be bringing to you probably in March or April, a request to renew applications that were funded last year. If those applications are funded at the same level, it means we would also have a little additional funding next year to award. So in total, that's $439,000 this year, and potentially an estimated $450,000 next year that the RHC can consider how they want to use to address some of this kind of funding gap. So with that, we are recommending kind of a 4-step process for the RHC to move forward. The first is for the RHC to draft a letter to the jurisdictions and kind of in response, suggesting that county leadership continue their advocacy, county and city leadership continue their advocacy with the state and the legislators to allow maximum flexibility for the use of ERP funding going forward, so that there is an opportunity to use ERP funding for Quinn Street and Unity Commons if the community so desires. Next is to recommend that the RHC approve an award of $400,000 using that excess county local revenue from 2025 to the city of Olympia to be used to support the operations of Quinn Street Village for the remainder of this state fiscal year. Third, to make a request that the Homeless Services Advisory Board look at that $450,000 of funding next year and make a recommendation back to the RHC on how to allocate that $450,000, with indicating the RHC's preference for those funds to be distributed to the Quinn Street and Unity Commons projects. And then finally, asking that the RHC request the Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention, the county, to lead an effort to prioritize projects and activities within the homeless response system. So if there is further reduction of funding, I think this gets into touching on a little bit of that COC funding discussion, is going through a process of identifying what are the priority projects in our community that if there is a funding loss that the RHC wants to make sure is funded. And so going through a process of getting input from the RHC technical team, the Homeless Services Advisory Board, the Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee, our Housing Action Team, to get input on that prioritization process. So in the event, hopefully it doesn't happen, but in the event of lost funding, then the RHC can move forward and kind of implement those contingencies for how to best allocate those funds. So I know that is a lot of information all at once with a lot of complicated funding pieces. So what our charge today, what we're hoping is getting some direction from you. If you have other ideas, certainly open. This was just something I wanted to kind of put out for discussion of how to move forward with kind of Olympia's request for additional funding for Quinn Street, but also the long-term planning for contingencies in case of additional reduction of funding for kind of ERP projects. Well, hopefully that is helpful, but happy to answer any questions. And Chair, I will let you, or do you want me to kind of navigate the discussion?
Either or. I saw that Megan put her hand up, but I also saw that Jay put his hand up. I don't know if Jay, if you have information that'll help any questions that may be coming.
Well, why don't we let Councilmember Sullivan go first, and then and then maybe depending on what her question is, I might fill in there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, you guys. As I got oriented and read the interlocal agreement, I saw that we, as a body, this body was charged with the responsibility of setting an annual budget and establishing an annual work plan that specifies activities for that fiscal period. And I'm wondering where those documents can be found if we have formal documents. And I'm also wondering what the process has looked like historically to arrive at those documents. Because I think we're both talking about this current fiscal year. I assume that for this body, we're talking about a fiscal year ending June 30, and then a fiscal year starting July 1. And so in looking for the comprehensive, fullest, biggest picture all in one place, I have yet to find that. And I'm wondering if somebody can please point me in the right direction for those documents.
Yeah, excellent question. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to find those documents. So the tech team at this point, there's not a work plan for the RHC. And so we really spent last year working on that mission, vision, values. And so the tech team has started drafting and preparing a work plan for the RHC. So our hope is in the February meeting, we'll be bringing a draft work plan for your consideration. We're getting input from the different advisory boards on that work plan. And so we are in the process of working on developing a work plan to bring to you for consideration. So that is kind of not quite ready yet. And so that would be for the kind of the 26 year work plan for the RHC.
Which is a July 1 start?
It is our funding contracts have a July 1. So we follow the state fiscal year with our funding. So the work plan has been a little bit more kind of amorphous. Generally, we've done it at the beginning of the year. Haven't always had it in place kind of January 1st. This year we're a little bit behind because we were waiting for the work on the mission, vision, values to finish up before we get started. The budget is really through our RFP process. And so we have issued an RFP, went out live last Friday. So this year we have funding for homeless services and then for affordable housing capital projects. So the budget is really through our RFP process. There has not been a separate budget specific to the RHC for projects. I know that's in the ILA. Jurisdictions have committed staff time to support the RHC, but there's not a separate RHC project budget outside of the funds that are allocated through our RFP process.
Question, clarification, Tom, about that. Is the RFP showing all of the funds from all of the different sources over the same time period, apples to apples, or is that not all in one place?
Yeah, so there's actually two RFPs. So one for homeless services, and then one is for affordable housing capital. So there is a distinction between the homeless services is on a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year because it lines up with the state fiscal year because a substantial portion of our homeless services dollars comes through the state. The affordable housing dollars are on a September 1 to August 31st program year. And that is because it lines up with our federal program year with federal dollars. So a little bit of a mismatch there, which can be confusing.
I'm heartened to hear that there is a plan to move us towards a work plan, because what I am hearing and what I have gathered in preparation for this meeting is that this body would really benefit from having some strategic look at the longer arc of what it is that we are doing from year to year. And that's what I'm hearing and I'm seeing too right now. And it's not that conditions won't change, they absolutely will change. And so one of the things I'm carrying into sitting in this seat is how can we as a body have conversations to make sure that we both take care of the immediate needs and sustain the current projects that we have, so that people don't get displaced after a lot of effort went into getting them housed. But also, how can we make sure that we have funds available for future weathering of storms or emergent needs? And so I'm still just trying to wrap my arms around all of those pieces, but I am very interested in seeing where we head with a work plan, and would love to see all in one place, on one page if possible, a budget. And I'm wondering if that is an ask that we could send to staff to produce.
Yeah, we can work on that. And that will be, we talk about our funding next year. We can provide that. Or next month, not next year, sorry.
Thank you, Megan. That was pretty good questions. I also would like to see that. Jay?
Yeah, and this maybe is for Tom and the rest of the tech team. If you're tracking Senate Bill 6027, that's sponsored by Alvarado, it's got Bateman on it as well. It provides some added flexibility for the use of home funds in cities and counties. The other thing, I met with Senator Bateman yesterday, and one of the City of Olympia's requests is to try to get more flexibility with the cap, the 65-35 cap. We've asked for maybe some friendly amendments to 6027 that would provide some additional flexibility that might help in this conversation about how do we weather the storm if funding goes away. Senator Bateman's going to work that with Senator Alvarado. I don't know if we'll get any further on that, but I just wanted to make sure everyone's tracking that and following 6027 and how it ends up, because it could provide some flexibility to this group in terms of how they address potential funding shortfall.
Thank you, Jay. Nick?
Yes, I had two things. One, is this something that you're looking for action on tonight, or something that you're looking for us to take back to our councils and staff to get guidance on? And then second, something we talked about, or I brought up last night with Franz Anderson, was Unity Commons being a similar model. And we were talking to the the representative from Lehigh about doing a tour with that. But I think would be really good, especially since we have so many new members, is setting up tours for all the major groups that we're funding, because I think it's really important not just to see numbers on paper and words on paper, but kind of scale, scope, and condition of these projects, so that we can kind of wrap our head around all of it and what's going on. So if that's something we'd be able to work out either as a group or small group, would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I would say that if you feel like you need to go back to council in order to provide direction, we can kind of put off a decision until next month. If there's some direction that can be provided tonight, that's great. We can move forward. If there's questions that are outstanding, we can do that. There is not a hard deadline on this next step. So if members would like a little bit more time to go back to councils to discuss, we are able to do that. I don't want to speak for City of Olympia in terms of timing around Quinn Street funding, but I do think we're trying to be responsive to the letter we received from mayors. But if there's a need for an additional time, we can certainly kind of accommodate that.
Go ahead, Jay.
I know Tom can't speak for Olympia, so I will. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, obviously we have till the end of this current biennium of funding till the end of June to resolve, but sooner rather than later for Olympia to resolve Quinn Street funding, at least the first $400,000 that gets us through the end of this year, would be great to get some resolution there. So we're not, every month that goes by, we have to worry about whether we have to fill a gap. So that's my only ask, is to get to decision as quickly as we can, so we just kind of know where we are. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Thanks so much. My suggestion would be maybe to give some time. There are a lot of new folks joining this meeting, and I know that there may be value in some folks being brought up to speed, and even value, Tom, with some folks connecting with you about some of the finances, so they can understand how this is working. I don't want folks to feel like they're being asked to make this decision in a vacuum. I think Councilmember Sullivan's comments about an action plan is great. And I love that picture. I kind of visually saw that arc of where is the money going and how are we following it with strategic objectives. So maybe just a little bit of time, Tom, so that each jurisdiction can kind of get their head wrapped around the requests and new members are brought to speed.
And Megan.
Thanks. I'm wrapping my mind around what these proposed solution options are. And I do want to understand a little bit more about the specific timing. I think, Jay, if I heard you correctly, that the $400,000 request would be needed July 1 onward in that budget cycle, and having a yes decision sooner than later would be peace of mind. Did I hear that correctly?
I see Kim's hand up, so I want to make sure I characterize that right. So Kim or Jacinda, please jump in.
You're right about that. I didn't, Councilmember Sullivan, I just make sure you got your question answered, because I just wanted to give a little bit more context about Quint Street Village, because I know there's a lot of new people. You might not know what Quint Street Village is. It's a 100 tiny home village. It's our largest tiny home village in the entire county. And we have served like the most vulnerable down there. It was really crucial, that site that helped bring the mitigation site out of the downtown area. And then we also helped we set down the whole Ensign encampment. A lot of the folks from the Ensign encampment became residents there, and many have been successful living inside. So just wanting everyone to know like what a crucial resource this is for us, and it would be wonderful to continue this funding for the 100 people who live there now. So I just want to keep that context in.
If you're going back and forth, I don't have to
Thank
follow.
you. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the procedure here. Yeah, that helped, Kim. Thank you. And just to be clear, I want to say that I'm in support, and the city of Tumwater is in support of people who are currently housed by our existing projects to stay housed. We don't want to see funding cliffs sending people that we worked very hard to get housed out on the street and to have to deal with the hardship and the trauma that that would cause. And I do appreciate the option of having some time to better understand the finances of things, because that would help me have peace of mind to understand what we have been charged to do here, as I understand it, to associate the budget with a work plan, with making sure we think into the future. And I know it's been a hard, 6 years since COVID, and there has been a lot of beautiful and amazing work that has been done. And I'm appreciative to everybody who's done that work before I got here. And I'm also appreciative of the grace that you're giving us as new members to make sure we fully understand as best we can the really big picture. So in case it was unclear, I'm supportive, and City of Tumwater is supportive, and more information and a little time would be useful, in my opinion.
Thank you. Are there any other members who have questions or comments, including folks that are alternates and or folks that are just here that would like to comment? Okay. Tom, do you feel like you have a direction, or do you feel like you want to come back? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so this is great. So we will put this on the agenda again for next month, but in the meantime, we'll make sure to get out some additional funding information. Again, happy to do those one-on-one deep dives in terms of funding and additional background. And so happy to follow up with jurisdictions individually as appropriate. But we'll look to bring this back for next month. And I would ask you to work with your tech team members as well from your jurisdictions if you have requests that we'll do our best to fulfill, so you have the information in the time you need to respond.
Go ahead, Megan.
Thanks. Yeah, so looking back at what the staff report had, the 1, 2, 3, 4 proposed solutions, I want to make sure that just because we are taking a minute on the funding request does not mean that I think we need to stall on number 1, which looks to be just making sure that we can advocate for flexibility. So I would be in support of being able to move forward with that piece of things. And I'm reading through the rest of them to see if there are other ones that we want to move forward. I guess I will pause there and see if others have thoughts.
Hey, Tom, could you put up the 4 for the group again? So we can have that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the 4 is we can draft a letter to go back to the mayors indicating how the RHC is planning to respond, and ask that the mayors and the county leadership kind of continue to advocate for maximum flexibility. So I think that is something we can begin working on. And then the other 3, the immediate request around the 400,000. And then the more long-term request of asking the HASAB to take a deeper dive into next year's funding. And then also the priority is kind of also a long-term process. So.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it possible that there could be an over collection in 2026 as well, or did we raise up expectations on those? I'm just trying to long-term think that out.
Yeah, so we projected that we were going to collect about $5 million in local sales tax in 2025. We collected ended up being like 5.8 million, if I recall correctly. 30% of that can be used for services for this purpose. And so we've awarded, last year we made 2-year awards. So the funds we awarded last year were 2-year awards. So in a sense, we are projecting that we're going to have that extra money next year if revenue collection stays flat.
Would that potentially drop the 850,000 request by the difference, or are we?
No, I do not believe it was. That's,
Okay.
No. Olympia's requests, they need $850,000 to fill their funding gap, is my understanding.
All right. I want to know, so how are we feeling about option one, starting from the top? How are we feeling as a group about option one starting the first, at least starting the first stage of this? Go ahead, Emily.
I like it. I think that we could probably move forward with option one.
Okay, thank you. Any additional thoughts on just moving forward on one and then coming back to 2 and 3 with an understanding that there is a bit of a little bit of a timeline on those to make sure that we get those in by a certain point? Okay. Tom, I don't know what we do by decision of this if we're going to be breaking this up.
I think at this point, I don't know if we need a formal motion, but if there's kind of a general consensus that folks are okay with moving forward with that first step, we can draft a letter. We can then share that letter with our HC members so that they can review it and provide comment, and then perhaps bring it back. Depending on, like with the legislation, I think that one is something important to move forward. So I don't think we want to wait until the February meeting. So we can send that out for review and comment, and then get everyone to sign off on that. And then the chair can sign that letter back out to the mayors. We can do that kind of via email and communicate with that. So everyone will have an opportunity to review and comment on that draft letter before it is sent out.
Sounds good. All right. If there is no other comments, I guess we can move on to the next item unless there is anything else from staff and or anyone else. Okay. All right. Since we have direction, I guess we'll move on to the Thurston Affordable Housing Advisory Board Opportunity Fund request. Item 7, I believe Alex is the next one.
It's me. Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Purse. I'm the Affordable Housing Program Manager at Thurston County. I am also one of the staff liaisons to the Thurston Affordable Housing Advisory Board. We have for you tonight a recommendation from the advisory board to fund a project that came into the Opportunity Fund. A little bit of background for folks that are new. The Opportunity Fund was set aside in 2024 for projects to come in or for requests for funding that are experiencing an emergent need outside of our typical annual RFP process. So eligible Opportunity Fund activities could be acquisition or rehab or activities that support preservation of manufactured housing. This fund is annually funded with funds rolling over each year and also being replenished or refilled with a revenue that was incurred in January. So it's 20% of the anticipated annual revenue that we receive for affordable housing projects. So the funding request that we have before you tonight, it came in November. Homes First, a local nonprofit agency, submitted an application to the Opportunity Fund. The request was for $149,739 to address infrastructure repairs across multiple properties that they own and operate as affordable rental housing. In December, the Affordable Housing Advisory Board met and discussed the application at their regular scheduled meeting, and they voted to recommend to the council, the Regional Housing Council, to award Homes First with the full amount from the Opportunity Fund. Some of the included items in the proposal are for emergency repairs that were needed at several of their homes for their properties that suffered unexpected disasters such as fire and storm damage in the past. It was in 2025. Other work that was included in the proposal includes garage door replacements and other just repairs that are needed at some of their properties to keep them habitable so folks have a safe place to live. We have Meg Martin, who is the chair of the advisory board here. We also have Jacinda Stelches, who is my co-chair, my co-staff liaison to the board. So they're here to answer any questions that the council members may have.
All right, opening it for discussion and questions. Any questions or thoughts on this request? Because this is an action item. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering, last year, how much of this funding we went through? Did we spend it all last year, or did we end the year with a balance?
We ended the year with a balance. I don't have the precise number in front of me at this moment, but I do have in the staff report that the current balance of the Opportunity Fund is $3.6 million. So with awarding this, it would just be reduced to $3.5 million. I believe it was like 2.6 or so that was left over from last year.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, I was just wondering if we could get, if possible, a little more information on the vote. You know, there was a few concerns expressed. If we could get both sides of that, if possible.
Yeah, Meg, if you'd like to answer that, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that question. I think it was a very in-depth conversation that opened up a opportunity for us to, as a board, to look at the Opportunity Fund in this coming year and how, like, what projects, like, really what is the purpose of it. And I think that was kind of the essence of the discussion was, what is the purpose of the fund and the intention of the fund, and does this project fit within that? And I think that there was differing of opinions on the board there, and then you see that reflected in the vote. And I think that everybody agrees on the need and necessity for these services in our community, for the request itself. I think that the hinge point of the vote and the discussion was really around whether this was the appropriate fund use for this request. And Leonard, I see your hand, but also Trish, I'm not sure if you'd want to add anything else that I might have missed from the discussion.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I think all organizations were in support and valued the work and the resources that the organization that applied brought to the table and that they were asking for. Every person at the table felt like it was necessary funding to support sustaining affordable housing units within our community. It was just a little bit challenging because the majority of our funding for previous asks and other funding sources created new housing, and we really felt like that was a priority for our group. So there was a little bit of hesitance, I think, I would say. Really, I don't think anyone around the table was, no, we shouldn't fund this, but there were a couple of no votes. But it primarily was because of the thinking, is this really the correct funding source to be asking for these funds? Is this the type of emergency that we are looking for? And a bit of a concern that it'll set a precedence that we'll get a lot more requests for emergency funding that feels more of a longer term issue with sustaining properties versus we have this opportunity tomorrow to purchase this property, which will bring 20 new units to our community. But it's a valuable project, and while I was one of the no votes on that, I supported the final decision of our advisory board and fully support that here as well.
Thank you. That's really good to hear, because I'm biasedly, I really do like Housing First and what they do, but I want to make sure we're not going outside the scope of what, I'm a big policy and procedure person too, so I don't want to, like you said, set a precedent on something that really doesn't align with what it's supposed to be for. So thank you for that information.
I'll just add before we move on to next questions that we did go through pretty meticulously to the eligibility criteria for it, and I think that there were definitely priorities that were met of the eligibility criteria, and so that was part of the discussion, was making sure that we were really looking closely at it and could it fit. But like I said, it did open up for the board that I think we are going to have some more detailed conversations about some of that stuff that Trish is talking about around, is it around new units and real actual opportunities for, you know, development to occur on a short timeline, or is this more of an emergency fund, or how are we seeing it?
Leonard.
Hey, thanks so much. What I wanted just to add is the spirit of the conversation that has happened at the Board of County Commissioners that was spurred by the conversation with the mayors and the city and county manager was, well, looking at the continuum of care and all the projects that we have in play, and with the changes in funding and the indication that some funding is going away, creating a contingency so that we could be able to adjust. I think the letter from Commerce really scared us, in that in one letter, all of a sudden, money was moving from one project to another. And the idea, I think Councilmember Sullivan mentioned it earlier, that people that are already housed could be pushed out of housing onto the streets. Like, nobody wants that, especially as Olympia is making great strides and working with the encampments, and we are 100% behind them on that. So I'm still feel like I'm a new person to this conversation, but when I hear of this fund with $3.5 million in it, the planner in me and the the fiscal part of me says, does that need to be? And I'm sure it has a purpose and a use, but I know that that's the kind of conversation some of our commissioners were having about, are we looking at the entire ecosystem of funding so that if something changes, we have the ability, the RHC has the ability to move funding around and support the infrastructure that we already have in place? Because what will make our situation worse is if one of our current projects can't get funded and we have to push out. I'm not sure this is a time to be adding new. And I'm just more speaking in representation of what I've heard the county commissioners say and why they agreed to support the letter with the other cities.
Thank you, Larry. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you. In my late night reading to prepare for this, I could not tell you which document I found this snippet, but somewhere I read Opportunity Fund could support 10 manufactured housing communities over a 10-year period. And as I gathered context about what I could, about the intent behind the Opportunity Fund, I wanted to both put that out there as somewhere that's in writing, and secondarily ask, do we have foundational documents that said this is what the people who set this fund up want it to be for, and are we using that as a guide? Are we saying that's inaccurate and we need to adapt it? How long have we had the Opportunity Fund? And when we think about manufactured housing communities, some of the things that I'm also walking into this role with an understanding of is that we are doing deep, meaningful work to get people housed off of the streets, but that also we want to make sure that we can be thinking about how to keep some of the very low income and moderate income housing that we have. And I know that there are still some gaps in, as I understand it, state law around the potential for mobile home parks to be sold out from under the residents that are living in them. And I know that there are some very large manufactured home parks in Tumwater. I know that there are some all across the community. So I was wondering if anyone could speak to the founding of the Opportunity Fund, or whether there are, stipulations somewhere in writing about that. And does anybody know roughly how many manufactured home parks we have, or how much it costs to support a manufactured home park if it's being up for sale to be sold out from underneath of the residents. Well, that's a lot of questions, so I don't expect you to have all the answers.
Go ahead, Tom. And I don't have to tell you.
Yeah,
Answer
I'll jump
a
in
question.
and start to answer that question, and maybe we can meet and I can go. So the Regional Housing Council 2 years ago did a deep dive on manufactured home parks, and that was really the impetus for the creation of the Opportunity Fund, because there was a manufactured home park that was being sold, and there was a request, hey, RHC, do you have any money to support residents purchasing that? And at that point, we did. We issued all of our funds through the RFP process. And so there was a recognition that we need to hold back a little bit of money so to take advantage of those opportunities for acquisition that don't have kind of a fall in line with a neat RFP timeline. And so we did a lot of deep work in terms of examining our manufactured home community within Thurston County. So I have spreadsheets with all of that information, happy to share with you. So at this point, we've not used the Opportunity Fund to support the acquisition of any manufactured home communities. But that was one of the kind of original kind of purposes of why the Opportunity Fund was set aside, to look more broadly at taking advantage of those opportunities as they arise. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful.
I don't know, Jacinda, if you want to help answer the question.
Yeah, I just wanted to very quickly clarify that the fund hasn't been used to help manufactured home communities, not because there's been applications and we've chosen not to fund them. There just hasn't been any applications for that need since the time that we did that work. You know, I think there's probably like if communities did want to purchase, our funding would certainly help, but it would not be enough to like provide the full funding amount. So just wanted to make that clear. And I think there was also a question around like other policy or like, you know, formal documents outlining like eligibility. Yes, there is, and yes, we can share. And it was intended to be a little bit broad. You know, manufactured home community kind of initiated the discussion, but we also tried to create a fund that could potentially serve needs that we you know, like we weren't maybe thinking of or aware of. And now it's, you know, a few years later. And I think our board, the Thurston Affordable Housing Advisory Board, has seen a few applications come in and have brought those forward to this council. And as Meg said, are kind of at this point where it feels like an appropriate time to revisit that eligibility criteria and maybe do some better defining or have that discussion of like what balance is too much of a balance, and like, you know, if we reach that certain balance, then what happens, where are funds directed, right? Like that decision obviously would be by this board, but all of that is wrapped up in stuff that the advisory board to this council is definitely concerned and talking about and starting those conversations.
Thank you, Jacinda. Megan, do you feel answered the questions, hopefully?
Yeah, thanks for the context.
All right. Any other comments? We are looking for an action tonight on this. I want to make sure everyone's questions are answered before we move on and we call a vote. I believe, Tom, this is a vote item, right? Yeah, cool. First vote. All right. I'm gonna call a vote. Go ahead.
I would move to approve Thurston County Affordable Housing Board recommendation to award Homes First $149,739 from the Opportunity Fund to address infrastructure repairs across multiple affordable housing rental properties.
Second.
All right. Ready to vote. The ayes. Aye.
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 Thank you. Any nays? No. All right. Abstentions. All right, unanimously approved. Cool. We're moving on to we're a little behind, but we're going to move on to item 8, which is the Homeless Services Advisory Board emergency request, fund request. That's Jackie.
That's actually going to be me.
Oh,
Yeah, Dana, let me give just a skosh of context before you jump in. Hold on one
Sure.
second. Hi, everybody. If we haven't met, I'm Jackie Velasco. I work for OHHP as the Homeless Response Program Manager. We're joined by Dana and Garrett tonight, our chair and co-chair of the HASAB, and also Heidi, who's a member of our lived experience housing steering committee, but also our HASAB. So those folks will walk you through sort of the staff report and questions on what happened at our most recent meeting about this emergency request. But I wanted to give you some quick context about what these are. So very similar to what Alex was describing with the Opportunity Fund, we have what's called the Homeless Services Emergency Fund. That's a set aside of $200,000 annually that runs from July 1 to June 30th of every year. That's intended to address any imminent safety and or housing stability concerns that face the community. The intention of those funds is that it needs to be a one-time emergency and that proposals address why it's a one-time emergency and then what the contingency plan is moving forward past the episode of emergency. And so what happens is when an organization locally has that need, they submit a written proposal to our office, usually to Kevin or myself or sometimes Tom. We take that proposal forward to the Homeless Services Advisory Board, which is made up of our local direct service experts, so folks who have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with services in our community presently, and they are cross-referencing that proposal against the policy that's REC has prior approved for eligibility and priority of those emergency funds. And so they do a deep dive into the ask and whether or not they feel as a group with their expertise in the field presently, they think that it meets not whether or not it's a great project or whether or not it's a worthy cause, but whether or not it aligns with the eligibility and priorities of that policy. And they move that recommendation forward to you for your review. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer about sort of the process by which those recommendations come forward. This is actually the third so far this year. They come in for all sorts of different reasons, and you're likely to see them again. But that's the peek behind the curtain. Making sense? Excellent. All right, Danny, you want to get to the good stuff? Tell them what's up.
Sure, yeah. So on January 14th, Olympia Mutual Aid Partners submitted an emergency fund request for the Homeless Services Advisory Board, as Jackie mentioned. For the Homeless Services Emergency Fund, their ask was for $25,000 to provide increased services at the jungle, to provide trash mitigation and associated supplies, survival supply distribution, including items specific to cold weather survival, and propane distribution for warming and to decrease trash burning. For some context, OLYMAP currently holds 2 contracts with OHHP for outreach primarily focused in the jungle. One is for general outreach and one is specific to cold and hazardous weather. They explained in their proposal that the emergency funds would allow them to bolster the goals and activities of both contracts to meet rising needs in the jungle. Additionally, they included letters of support for their request from their partners at the Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency and Inner City Transit, who have both in recent months partnered with OLYMAP and Thurston County OHHP staff to brainstorm solutions to address the concerns with hazardous burning and resulting air quality issues at the jungle and surrounding area. The HASAB convened for an emergency meeting on the 22nd to discuss and determine, as Jackie mentioned, and there were some key points. Main one was to address if the application meets criteria for funding eligibility, and the majority voted that the proposal does illustrate a significant or imminent health and safety danger addressing hazardous burning in alignment with emergency fund policy, with the unexpected ending of Olympia trash removal in the jungle, increasing the likelihood of trash burning. I think they did a survey, and the 3 top reasons folks burn trash in the jungle is 1, to get rid of the trash, 2, to stay warm, and 3, to cook or provide food for themselves. The proposal didn't really clearly distinguish how the unexpected expense versus budget shortfall, as they have applied for a similar emergency funding request last year. It was kind of similarly written. So that was a point of contention for some of our folks, and we continue to discuss And we also agreed that the proposal indicates that the current propane supply should last through March, which supposedly concludes the coldest months of the year. So we're hoping that we're not going to see as much of an impact for the propane dollars. We also discussed whether a partial or edited award would sufficiently meet the need for the request, and we ultimately decided as a committee that the request should be considered as a whole, given its size and nature of the request. And then we also agreed that we would recommend the possibility of approving the request with some added stipulations, which were somewhat similar to their last request last year, and that they need to provide verification that the existing supply inventory will be supplemented with the award funds and not backfilled. And then also that they would provide a sustainability plan for similar needs in the future, as this is their second request in 2 years for this purpose. And I don't see it here, Jackie, but I think there was another one that these funds would not be used for staffing or administrative costs. Financial implications would be that our current fund balance is roughly 148,000, so it would leave about 123,000 in the emergency services fund to use through June of this year. And we recommended, with 5 yes votes and 1 no vote, 8 of 12 members present, that you recommend the proposal for approval of emergency funds to the Regional Housing Council with the above mentioned stipulations. Any questions?
Questions from members? Concerns, questions? I don't have any. I will call a vote, so we will move on. All right. Okay. Okay, Nick.
I think you might still be muted, Nick.
Sorry. I was saying I feel like this is something we should at least talk about. The reserves are dwindling down. And I think there is some concerns there with having, 2 years in a row requesting this. It really not falling under the category of unexpected expense. So, I mean, I think some of those issues should at least be talked about and addressed. And there was a no vote on there. If there was a reason why, I think it'd be important to go over that as well.
Yeah, kind of what you outlined, Nick. My understanding was the no vote was someone agreeing that the eligibility was a little in question given the cyclical nature of this. But as per the emergency fund policy is written, it does exist to alleviate significant or imminent health and safety danger, which is why we ultimately came to the 7-1 vote, is that we agreed that this would address the hazardous burning issue the increasing hazardous burning issue that we're seeing over there. And then you had another question, Nick. Oh, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but we started with 200,000 for the year, and we've had one other request previously for this fund so far.
I can share a touch more context too, Dana, that I think, and Tom, back me up with a little longer history than I have. Traditionally, I don't think we've spent down this fund any year all the way. And so far we've had one request approved this year for about $50,000 earlier in the year. One was denied because it didn't meet the criteria in the eligibility policy. And then this one is the third. So that's, if we have that 120, if the $25,000 is through, there would be 123 left remaining until the end of June. And then it would reset back up to 200, just for folks mental math.
And I would just add, Nicholas, to your other point, I think that's why we added the stipulation as a group that they provide a contingency plan or a future plan so that we don't see a cyclical application for this. But I would also clarify that it is well within their right and the eligibility to apply every year. So that is an option that they do have, but given the similarities, we did request that there would be a plan put in place for next year. You got anything else for me, Nick?
Yeah, that last part worried me a little bit, is that it's kind of like we're just getting the worries me of, are we just going to continue to deal with applying for something every year because we can? And at what point do I say, no, this doesn't qualify? That last part was a little worrisome there.
I hear you, and I think, it's determined on, is it eligible as per policy written. I think the 7-1 was that we did as a group determine that it does fit, but yeah, that's why we have those stipulations. We do agree. Any other questions?
I think we have several staff and a member of the advisory and members of the board. I'm not sure if people raise their hands in response to the current conversation or not. Want to make sure I get that. If Kevin, Jay, or either one of you, is a comment having to do with Nick's comment, or is this have to do with separate?
I was just going to add additional context in terms of the eligibility. I know it's mentioned, and there's attached notes from both Orca and Intercity Transit in support of this funding. Part of the the unexpected outcomes that we're looking at in terms of eligibility. The jungle recently wasn't able to have continuous trash cleaning services, of which they've had for the better part of the last 2.5 years. Kim Contract can correct me on that one. And just that slowdown in the trash pickup led to can correlate to increased burning at the jungle, of which OLIMAP is trying to support the alleviation of. So that also played a part into the eligibility of this funding decision.
Thank you, Kevin. I see Kim and I see Jay. I'm not sure who else wants to provide context.
Well, I think Kim was going to respond to Kevin's comment, so maybe go there first.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. Just another, yes, we've been working together with Intercity Transit, and there is the burning of the trash. So I think that's the main thing that we're wanting to do. But the other thing too, just recognizing that the jungle is the last large encampment that we have, and there may have been an increase of people who have gone there, and we don't have any numbers, but just knowing that it probably would have been hard for OLIMAP to predict how much they would have needed last year to predict the numbers that are there now. But it would definitely, propane is a better burning source than trash because it's affecting the employees over at Intercity Transit. Thank you.
All right. Jay, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to add that, we're going to do some work regionally to kind of do some planning for the long term around the jungle. And in between now and then, it needs every resource that we can provide between now and then to keep people safe, particularly not just the residents that are there, but those at Intercity Transit and others that are impacted. So I think if we could at least say yes for another year, give more time for some more planning work to happen, and maybe we can get to some different places, but we're just not there yet. And I agree with Kim's comment. I think that there has been some growth there. We got to get a handle on that, and I think it's hard for OLIMAP to kind of gauge earlier in the year how much they really needed.
Thank you, Jay. Emily, you had your hand up for a while, and then you took it down. I don't know if you have anything.
Oh, actually, most of what I was going to say was already just said, so I appreciate that context. I was only going to add, I'm the representative on ORCA for the county, and I've been familiar with this situation for quite some time, and I'm in support of this request, but most of the reasons why have already been stated, so thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, I really appreciate the context. One thing that I try to do, especially even on our council, is that, especially if it's a funding thing, that we have some level of conversation, and sometimes it's hard just to open that door. But the added context really makes a large difference in moving forward a lot of these things, and only takes a couple minutes. So I really appreciate for everybody contributing on that.
Thank you, Nick. I'll do a couple last comments myself. Yeah, I was about last year. I'm on the Intercity Transit board, and I was talking to the staff there, and it was one of the questions they actually had. They were like, who in Olympia can we figure out this? Because in the late afternoon and early mornings, it will start rolling right over into Intercity Transit, and the staff are working outside. Air quality is very important for folks living there and also folks working in the area. Thank you, folks and staff, for providing context and answering questions. If there are any other comments, otherwise I will ask for a vote. No? All right, I will entertain a vote. Or a motion for a vote.
I move we fund this as presented.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want me to bring a plate too? Oh, that'd be great. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
Paul, I think you're line miking a little. Just want to let you know. Thank you. All right. It sounds like any nays, any abstentions. Okay. All right. We've passed that item. All right. Next item is the Fran Anderson Permanent Supportive Housing, which is Jacinda.
Thanks, y'all. I just wanted very quickly. I don't know what our procedures are, but if there needs to be any sort of addressing of like the timing in our agenda, I don't know if we need to like formally extend or if we can just kind of continue rolling. But wanted to pause and acknowledge that if that needs to happen. I don't know if it does.
I'm not quite sure in the bylaws. Tom, do you know?
Yeah, that is not something formally addressed. Generally, we're done by 6 o'clock, so we don't run into this issue too often. There's no formal procedure in terms of going over whether we need to extend the meeting formally or not, unless someone else wants to weigh in on that question.
Megan.
Hi, I switched to a mobile device because I need to perform parenting duties. I'm a primary custody solo parent and need to go pick up my child. So I will be here for probably 10 more minutes. And I was hoping we could get through the last action item before I had to sign off.
Okay. No pressure, Jacinda.
This is a very complex topic, so I'll start with acknowledging that. And hopefully Megan and others can provide the context that's needed. So this item is about the Franz Anderson Permanent Supportive Housing Project. I know before I dive in, if we have time, Jay, our city manager, and City of Olympia also kind of had some comments. So Jay, feel free if you want to jump in or want me to kind of set up the context, let me know.
Happy to kick this off. I know time is short, so I'll be quick so we can get to some discussion and it may carry over to next month. But as you know, we have a request in from Lehigh to change the housing mix on the Franz Anderson Permanent Supportive Housing Project. And we recognize that there are some questions and more discussion is needed on the proposed unit mix change. I do want to point that the proposed change still aligns with our regional goals and needs. The greatest housing needs in our community are for permanent supportive housing units, as well as units for households within incomes up to 50% AMI in our community. And we know this from our collaboration on work on our comprehensive plans. In fact, on a countywide housing need basis, just some data for you, we need long-term about almost 3,600 units of permanent supportive housing. We need about 8,700 units of housing at the 0 to 30% AMI. And we need close to 8,500 units of 30 to 50% AMI. So even with this change in mix, what I really want to say is we need this project and many more like it countywide. That being said, we're committed to continue to work collaboratively with partners in Lehigh and try to ask that we all hold ourselves accountable to meeting the deadlines proposed to keep the project on track, which is coming to some agreement in the February-March timeframe. So their request from Lehigh reflects their commitment to the project and the response to the current funding challenges. And I think that's really what I want to leave you with is this is not Lehigh just kind of acting willy-nilly. They're responding to the funding climate that's in front of them and trying to get this project across the finish line and asking for our support in changing the mix to make that happen.
Thank
So
you,
just I don't
Jay.
know if there's more to add, or Tom, just more to add.
Thank you, Jay. So a very brief context here for new members. This is a project that is occurring on City of Olympia land. It was purchased a few years ago for the specific purpose of affordable housing. That purchase was a partnership with Thurston County, and a solicitation was issued to attract a developer that was willing to develop, as Jay said, the most needed housing in our community. Lehigh was responsive to that, and this board, as well as I think several individual jurisdictions, approved kind of moving forward with them to develop this project, which is a permanent supportive housing project, 70 units located approximately 527 Franz Anderson Road. Lehigh has worked since that time to attract capital funding and did get an award at the end of, or excuse me, I guess it would be the end of last year, the beginning of this year, for 9% low-income housing tax credits. And they have worked this, we're in 2026. They worked throughout 2025 to attract an equity investor. That tax credit award and that equity investment accounts for about 50%, a little over 50% of the capital project needs. So they have been unable to attract an investor because of many of the things that we've talked about throughout this meeting in terms of funding and what's going on at the federal level and changes and unpredictability to funding sources. So they approached us, they approached the county and Olympia specifically because the county is the RHC fiscal agent. City of Olympia is, through an interlocal agreement that the jurisdictions, RHC jurisdictions entered into, is essentially managing pooled funding from the individual jurisdictions that would then be dispersed to Lehigh. So they approached us, explained what was going on, and then subsequently requested that we all permit them to kind of move forward with a change to their unit mix. So the original project was proposed as 71 units, one of those being a manager's on-site unit, and then the remaining 70 units to serve homeless individuals and individuals up to a 30% area median income. And what they are proposing now is to change that unit mix. And again, that's in response to, among other things, some communication from the housing authority that has let them know that while they thought that they'd be able to provide housing vouchers to support the operations of those units once they are built and in place, the housing authority has let them know that there is not the budget to do that. They're uncertain if there will be the budget next year. There's a lot of uncertainty. So Lehigh again is shifting, and their proposal is that 35 of the units, 35 of the units be changed to serve a target population that's 50% AMI, and of the total, and then the rest, the other 35 would remain at 30% AMI. And then additionally, with some of the funding sources they're looking at, overall 47 of the total units of the 70 would serve a homeless population, and 23 would serve up to 50% AMI, but not necessarily homeless population. And then all 70 tenants in the project would still be able to access the on-site services provided there by Lehigh and CMAR. So Olympia came last month, and I kind of introduced this topic after we talked about it at Tech Team for a while. And the ask last month was to let me know kind of where councils are standing, what information you all needed, and to kind of come to an agreement if we were all on board to support that unit mix. Since that time, I think Councilmember Dunning mentioned that Lacey did talk about it last night and had a pretty robust conversation. And what I'm hoping tonight, in a limited amount of time and understanding that there's still additional questions, is to really kind of ask you all from your individual jurisdictions to let me be in contact with me either now or in the near future about any questions that are coming up in your individual jurisdictions about the unit change, so that I can try to kind of consolidate questions and then also make sure that those answers are being distributed to all RHC members so we all have the same information. I want to pause because I know Megan needs to go, Councilmember Sullivan. If you have a question, I can try to answer that in case you need to drop off.
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment that I was able to speak with our new city manager and new mayor and get some of the historical context of where the city of Tumwater has been on this issue. And it's my understanding that city of Tumwater is supportive. So I wanted to carry that forward, that we would support this change if the group supported it.
Thank you so much.
All right. With very limited time. Go ahead, Leonard.
Perfect. I know there was a question, and this may be able to be taken offline, about whether an ILA would or an amendment would have to be signed or not. So just flagging that for future conversation.
Thank you, Leonard.
Chair, do you mind if I comment quickly before I see that Councilmember Dunning also has his hand up?
Cool. Go ahead.
Just wanted to say from Olympia's perspective that we are also aware that some jurisdictions, I'm aware that Lacey is interested in the ILA amendment. We are willing to do whatever we need to do to kind of continue moving it forward. So if the need is to do an amendment to the ILA, then Olympia is willing to bring that forward. And, in this context tonight, would look to you all to kind of, weigh in on if you are thinking that is also needed in your jurisdiction, and also a commitment of if that is, like, staying within this tight time frame to allow us to do that and be able to be responsive to Lehigh.
Nick, I think your hand was up first.
Yeah, I just wanted to pass along what we discussed last night in Lacey, and some of the stuff is Lacey specific because a lot of it really centered around the status of Maple Court and the future of Maple Court, which is in Lacey, and wanting to get some clarification on how that ties in with the region as a whole, including this project. We're really in a wait and see mode right now, which we also understand, like, there's a time frame here, and so if some of those conversations might have already been started today after our meeting last night. I do know that at least under from what I have talked to today with the city manager, the ILA looks like it would need to be amended, and I believe he talked to the city attorney on that. But I don't think that's like a huge roadblock necessarily. But there was a lot of questions from the council on kind of how this project ties into everything overarching as a whole, and some of the issues that we've had with Lehigh and Maple Court, and kind of doing that again. And so there definitely are some concerns there. And that's one of the reasons why we talked about seeing this model, because it's a change from what we're used to, seeing this model work and going to Uni Commons, or maybe even going to some other areas to make sure people feel more comfortable. But a lot of it was really just trying to figure out, how do we ensure that we take care of Maple Court and get it to the place that it was always supposed to be, and adding another project on top of that. And there was really just wanting to have some of those conversations with all the partners. And I think that was really where we sat. And I think a lot of those are already starting. So.
Thank you, Nick. I don't know if anyone in staff could answer that or respond to that, but I would also, I think it'd be important that any issues with Maple Court or funding or any of those things, I think that we should have the opportunity to add those to the agenda as issues. Yes. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jay.
I just want to say for Councilmember Dunny, I think it's a yes and. I think there's a commitment that's made to Franz Anderson by all the partners, and I think the funding mix has changed. So I don't see it as an added project; it's an existing project. But we also need to address Maple Court in the future too. I mean, that is an issue to get. We have got to get that project where we committed to get it to in the long term. So I just want to say from my perspective, and again, it's a long to Councilmember Vanderpool's point. Maybe it's a longer term conversation with the RHC. I think we'd love to see Franz Anderson continue on the path it's on, continue to work on a plan to get Maple Court where it needs to be. And then we've got to address the long-term funding implications of potentially losing state level funding, right? I think all those things are things that need the RHC's attention over the long term. So I just wanted to add that as we're short on time.
Yeah, and part of that was how do we get Maple Court, where do people start at one and go to another, and how does this whole process work together to be a cohesive unit, kind of nailing that stuff down and being really comfortable with that.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts, concerns, statements, support of from the members, discussion items? Go ahead, Jacinda.
Can certainly make some time for discussion, but since we are also kind of over in time, again, just wanted to reiterate that our ask is that everyone is able to kind of let us, City of Olympia, know if their individual councils are also interested in an amendment. It sounds like that's kind of the way that we're going to need to go. So that would need to be put on council agendas. If there's any specific asks that individual jurisdictions need, any questions, that they need answers before they're able to make a decision, if you all can let me know so that, again, I can coordinate those and distribute them to everyone. And then, again, my hope and my ask is that by next meeting, or at the very latest early March, that a discussion and a decision can be made from this board to allow enough time to do all the things that need to be done, and allowed Lehigh enough time to move forward on the schedule that they need to move forward on to keep their other funding and actually break ground by the end of this year.
Jacinda, I have a question myself. Would it be possible to vote on this item, but then have a separate item about the ILA afterwards?
Go ahead, Jay.
I would just say, the email I sent off to the county city managers about this to when Rick asked about it is, I don't think the holdup is going to be the ILA. I think if we can come to agreement on the changes to the funding mix, I think we can get an ILA revision done quickly. Now, whether or not you want to take it to a vote, that's another question. But I wouldn't want the ILA to be the holdup, right? If even one jurisdiction says, "Hey, we think the ILA needs to be changed to reflect this," then I think we just move in that direction as long as we can get an answer on the funding mix.
Okay. All right. Then I'm gonna allow a discussion specifically on the funding mix, and then I'm gonna ask for a vote on that. Jacinda, go ahead.
Just want to clarify, we're talking about a change to the unit mix.
Unit mix, yeah, 50.
All right, thank you. I said the wrong word.
Yep. Go ahead, Megan.
I move we adopt the proposed unit mix as outlined in the documents sent out.
All right, looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Is there discussion?
Oh, discussion. Go ahead, Nick.
I was like I said, Lacey is in no way ready, based on the information they said to approve that mix today without further discussion. So I do think it'd be a little bit reckless to personally have that vote without further discussion.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering to just in this point, because we're late on time too, and I appreciate trying to get this across the finish line. It'd be great to be in a place where we're unanimous on this, because each partner controls their own money. So somebody vote no means they could pull their funding and the project dies, right? So I think giving some time to let Jacinda answer the questions that are coming from Lacey in particular, and let the city manager and the county managers work this a bit to make sure that the electeds in all jurisdictions have all the answers they want. As long as we can get this back next month and reach a decision, we're good on timeline. And that's just my ask, and I appreciate it, but I think that if that's what helps everyone, that'd be my suggestion.
Leonard, then Megan.
Yeah, I support Jay's perspective. I think the value is go slow to go fast. Let's make sure we can iron out those items. And I know that City Manager Rick Walk and Jay have been in conversation. So getting there together is really important, as Jay mentioned.
All right. Go ahead, Megan.
In consideration of that, I will withdraw my motion. And once we complete this motion, I will be signing off.
All right, thank you. I accept the withdrawal. Let's bookmark this till next month, if that's okay with the board. All right. With that said, I guess we'll move on to communication update.
We can hold this until the next month's meeting. We can move this to the February agenda. Sorry, Lisa.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
Hey, sorry, I know we're past time. Can I ask that we also, in the communications update next month, touch on coordination when it comes to cold weather and hazardous weather events, just between jurisdictions? I was planning on raising that tonight, but I know we're out of time.
Sounds good. Thank you. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting. If there are any other comments, or since we're way over time, I don't think I need a motion to end it. I think you should just end it. Right? Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate all of the comments. Thank you again. I will see you in February.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.